Hello, my fellow fanboys and fangirls, and welcome to another installment of Julz Chan's Comic Corner, where I give you my thoughts on the latest comics to hit the shelves. And then I hope you all don't put a fist through my head. Today, we're talking about why I suddenly became an anime character. No, we're talking about Action Comics. And for my thoughts on the previous Action Comics, or any other comics I've reviewed recently, I recommend you all see my text reviews at theouterhaven.net, and stay tuned for more content. Either that, or you all could just stare at my new form. Eyes, up here. Actually, towards this comic, cause it's great. Today, we're talking about Action Comics 960. For those hearing about this for the first time, here's the lowdown. Lex Luthor publicly announced himself as Metropolis's new Superman. No, not that one. And pre-New 52 Superman can't let someone like Lex tarnish the name of this world's Superman who supposedly died recently. Superman and Luthor had a brief spat, but suddenly this world's version of Doomsday appeared, and the two do everything they can to fend it off, and at the same time trying to avoid civilian casualties. Already this is better than Man of Steel and BVS. However, unlike previous incarnations of Doomsday, not only is this thing stronger physically, this one seems a lot smarter, if not more aware, making this thing all the more dangerous. And in this issue, Clark gets a little help from an old and new friend, Wonder Woman, and she has time to even meet Clark's family. Thank goodness, considering that Doomsday seems to have his eyes set on a new target. And no doubt, this will threaten Clark's family. Now let's talk about the story. The series has been fairly solid so far, and I can always trust Dan Jurgens to put out a great Superman story, and him making an opening storyline which feels almost like a somewhat sequel to Death of Superman, which he wrote, by the way, can't feel any more befitting by him writing it. That being said, while the newly revived Action Comics has had a great start, the previous issue, however, left a lot more to be desired since it felt very repetitious. The same information was repeated, the same emotions were repeated, the same inner dialogue was repeated, and the fight scene felt like it was going on for too long. Obviously, yes, a fight with Doomsday is not gonna end so quickly. However, if it's gonna be a long fight, it's best to avoid repetition and vary it up a bit. I was slowly starting to lose interest in the story due to the non-stop action. Haha, funny, I know it's called Action Comics. But that is until this issue came out. And thankfully, the comic gives us a break from the non-stop action, with the fighting only taking up half of the comic, then going into character stuff. The fight is still awesome, to be sure, especially when Superman super speed punched Doomsday. Oh, Flash, thank you for teaching him this move. It looks so cheesy, yet great. And as the story went on, the tension started to set in, and I was really on the edge of my seat when I was reading this. Doomsday apparently sensed another Kryptonian and started hopping over to Smith Farm and went after Clark's family, in particular, his son, John. This is probably the highlight of the comic when Clark and Lois speculate, why did Doomsday run away? But then realized that Doomsday must be going after a new target. Lois then quickly took John and the car while Clark rushed back home. For a couple of pages, I felt worried and was going, no, not Lois and John. It really picked things up immensely with the tension, and I was very much invested. It just shows how much of a threat this version of Doomsday is and how much of a threat he imposes, not just to the city but to Clark's family. Not only is this thing powerful, but it's smarter and more advanced, like sensing Kryptonians, although I don't know if that was a thing with Doomsday before. But thank goodness Clark got to them first, and then it led to great character moments between Clark, his family, and Diana. But I was really scared to turn the page. Again, I really liked how the story progressed finally and gave us a rest from the constant action. Great action, yes, but I should not have to go through the Michael Bay effect in a Superman comic. That is a no-no. As great as this comic is, there are a few glaring flaws story-wise. The first is Clark Kent, or more specifically, the New 52 Clark Kent, being alive despite readers seeing this world's Superman die at the end of his series. Second is the strange hooded observer. These are probably going to be explored in future stories, but as of now, they just feel like unnecessary, tacked-on subplots. This world's version of Clark, his only purpose is to remind readers that he may or may not remember being Superman, or him getting caught in the crossfire and needing to be saved. Anyone feel like he's trying to pull off a Lois Lane? Then again, Clark is a dedicated journalist, and he's gotten himself into trouble and needed to be saved by a superhero. Yep, he's pulling a Lois Lane. And the green hooded figure who's watching all of this go down, he seems to keep commenting on the events that transpire, but not saying anything new or interesting. The series just keeps reminding us that they exist, and then do nothing else with them. Admittedly, at first they seem like interesting subplots, but after a couple of issues, they feel like things that we could have just cut out of the story and not lose anything of value at this point. There's also the exposition dump that Superman gave explaining Doomsday. Okay, it's been a while since I read Death of Superman, so I cannot be sure how much of this is accurate, especially considering that this version of Doomsday is different, but since it's the same writer as the Death of Superman, I'm just gonna have to roll with it. Now we move on to characters. Now that we've been able to take a breather from the action, we are able to have really good character moments. While Diana did very little fighting in this issue, her best moments were when she interacted with Clark and his family. It's even better seeing how she treats this encounter with a much leveled head. For those who have followed at least some of the New 52, this world, Superman and Wonder Woman were a couple. However, while it might be natural for Diana to feel or act odd around an alternate universe version of her dead boyfriend, she treats it very calm and maturely because she knows this is not the version of Superman she fell in love with, and he's married. She seems to be more interested in helping them out and being their friend. Her acting very maturely and as a true friend really speaks highly of her character. And thank goodness that none of this started a generic, predictable, infuriating, and cringe-worthy love triangle. You know a bad writer would try and force that. Yeah, it's possible. However, it would be best to see our heroes act more maturely instead of idiots. And now we move on to Clark and his family. Throughout the story, Lois and Clark have been reciting inner monologue about how scared they are, about how Doomsday is back, and they hope that they could win this fight and Clark could just return home to be with his family unscathed. They are both clearly worried, so scared that they don't even want to tell their son about the last time Clark fought Doomsday and how that ended. It's understandable. Doomsday is one of the very few creatures that killed Superman, and fighting a more advanced version is a very terrifying thought in on itself. So when Clark comes back to see his family, embraces Lois after spending so much time worrying about each other, readers can very much appreciate the sense of reprieve, the sense of relief on both characters' faces. It's so touching and adorable. I think if someone were to read this story, perhaps it would be best to read Lois and Clark the series, also written by Dan Jurgens, and the current Superman series by Peter J. Tomasi beforehand, in order to gain a better connection with Clark and his family. It would provide a more fruitful and more emotional experience when reading this comic. Now we move on to the art, because art is beautiful, isn't it? While there are a number of two-page spreads, there was a level of detail, and the artist did not spare any dead space. While I can agree that publishing a comic twice a month means that the creative team might need to make some shortcuts, but it's best to showcase as much effort as possible. Thankfully, the art by Tyler Kirkham, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, does just that. The two-page spreads and splash pages aren't so much of a problem because they seem very worthwhile. There's something visually interesting and something important. They're shots that don't feel too overdone and feel like they deserve the full-page spread. The effort was definitely there. It was also nice to see how our characters contrast from the background, not just in coloring, but also in terms of clean penciling. The background images are drawn more sketchy, the colors are a bit more toned down, it's a bit more rough. clearly detailed, but not to the level of our main characters. The character models for our cast are a lot cleaner and have more vibrant colors. Other times that does not seem to be the case and Superman looks just as rough as the background, but then again, he has been fighting Doomsday and the city is a mess, so I can't expect him to look clean 100% of the time. Although some mistakes can still be seen, such as Superman's eyes. Either they're shaded out or blank white. Oh my god, Youngblood's disease! And yet Diana is not given this kind of treatment because... Putting minor flaws aside, the art has a lot of effort put into it, and there are several standout moments, such as Wonder Woman saving New 52 Clark Kent, Superman slamming a bus on top of Doomsday, Superman speed-punching Doomsday, and Clark's little moment with his family. Overall, the comic was great, a wonderful step up from the last issue, or even a step up in the story overall thus far, not only offering great action featuring Superman and Wonder Woman, but also giving us a break from the action, adding more tension that kept readers invested, and great character moments that will make readers smile and go, aww. The art was also great, especially for the character models that were contrasted from the rough background, and of course illustrating the great action scenes. Action Comics issue 960 receives a 4.8 out of 5. Alright guys, that's all the time I have. Please like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought about the comic in the comments below. Please remember to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and please support my work via Patreon, especially if you want to see more of this. The show, I mean. And if you can, please support the work of my fellow content creators at theouterhaven.net via the website's Patreon page. See you guys later, and remember, stay fantastic.